AI? Oh, wow, Sam, hot take there. I gave 2 conference presentations about how much I hate AI and why libraries shouldn't use it. Nicole Henning's course on AI literacy for librarians. Kira, thumbs up, thumbs down on that? Thumbs up, okay. Lindsay has lots of experience with AI. Doctoral research focuses on Doctor of Education's students' use of AI. So keeping her thumb on the pulse there. I have done the Library Ready AI training through my local BOCES, attended local library conferences with AI sessions. So Catherine Amato, you've done your homework there, I think. Gone to some training, but most of it has been really basic intro level stuff. That's me. I am very intro. I am the pre-converted. I'm not a holdout, like I don't hate it, but I am a pre-converted kind of novice. We have some experience, but playing with a few tools, day-long workshop, just a little bit of sandbox experimentation there, school projects, someone in IT, Ramon, using it a lot lately. And the list goes on here. Excellent. So those of you, we have, it seems like quite a range here of novice to experienced. So I think it might be really good if we could open the floor a little bit and hear from, let's start with the novices, like what was useful coming from a beginner level point of view, hearing from the trainings that you've had or that you've experienced. What helped bridge some knowledge gaps for you? This could be very helpful even for the more experienced folks communicate to their colleagues and to other stakeholders. So can we hear a little bit from those folks? If anybody has a take on that, you can unmute yourself and share.
Well, I'll jump in since I used it for a school project once. It was actually in a technology class, and he was wanting us to understand how AI could be used in conjunction with our work. So basically, what we had to do is use like Chat GPT and another one, Perceptively, I forget what it's called. But to use it to kind of gain program ideas for how to close um, digital poverty or digital literacy poverty gaps or something like that. So it was really neat just to use it to kind of get some other ideas that I wouldn't have thought about for programming or ways to educate people on digital literacy. So I just used it as a jumping ground, and that's that's about it.
Awesome. Who else? Who
Yeah,
else?
perplexity.
Who else has kind of started from ground level and had some intro information? And what about that information was useful to you?
I mean, I can go. I was already learning about Python and large language models for assisting humanities and social science professors and students. So when ChatGPT came on the scene, I knew like the basics of how it was trained, um, which has helped a lot with because people are confused between generative AI and other kinds of AI. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else have a kind of a beginner level anecdote note for people who are trying to communicate these different levels of understanding of this topic?
Well, I guess I'll go. I have a very, very basic relationship with AI, I'll say. I've started to use it to generate some imaging for the courses that I develop at my job. So um, that's just, I mean, I feel like a lot of people might use Grammarly and not realize like that's an AI tool and kind of been around for a long time. But that was probably maybe one of my first experiences with AI using Grammarly, and not really understanding that it's AI, I think, at that time. With the suggestions that it can give you, to assist your writing and tone and things like that. So, um, that was kind of the first thing I've ever used, and now I'm using like AI generative tool called FreePick. And you can get like a certain amount of images, and you kind of put in what you're looking for, and it'll generate some pretty funny images sometimes of, um, you know, like cats reading books and stuff like that. So you can insert something a little quirky or some fun things so that people don't fall asleep taking the online courses sometimes. So, yeah, I'm very, very intro. Not completely sold on it. I've seen some pretty bad things with AI, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. So, all right, novice here.
Excellent. So shifting gears, unless there are more novices that want to like elbow their way to the front here. Those of you who maybe consider yourself a little bit more intermediate or even advanced, comfortable with AI tools and putting them into your regular workflows, how did you make those leaps? Even just small steps from becoming novice to maybe somebody who's a little bit more fluent in the jargon or knowing about the tools. What trainings, what practices do you recommend? And how do you communicate with your colleagues, your stakeholders that kind of have a shaky understanding of all this?
So I think I'll go. Yeah, so for me, I tried a lot of reading first, then attended a number of trainings, and I began with one from Urban, micro-credentialing. And then I went to others just to listen, and then attended physical and online workshops on AI, and then listened to what others have done in class. And then I decided to explore a few tools that were mentioned or what I read so that I see what they have to offer. So I picked a few tools. For example, I use a lot of Gamma in my documents and presentations. So I develop like PowerPoint presentations from scratch. And then I use the tool to make it improve what I have. And then I also compare preparing the same document from AI so that I look at the two contents, one from myself, improved with AI, and just a prompt. Then I see what the two will look like. Then I use that in my class to teach because I do information literacy instructions. So while I teach, I focus on the ethical bit of it, the ethical and responsible use of AI. So I see how to incorporate that in learning. And then we have a recent one, which is from Google, Notebook LM, which is so good because it supports students to have conversations with the tool. They can interrupt, they can ask questions, and then you start like a discussion, and therefore that becomes a very good learning tool. So I've explored some tools and I see how they work, and then I use that now practically in my class. and using that in my work as well. Yeah, so I use that for teaching and also for efficiency, because we all need technology to support our work. Yeah, so for me, I would say I'm comfortable in a number of them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear your experiences in your workspace as well. One of the things I hope everybody can take advantage of is when you do flip through the chat here and see what courses people have taken or just practices people have done, that you are able to connect with each other in this space. So do remember to flip through the chat and make friends in here. So get people hitting you up for more detail.
And then I did a library guide just to support
Yeah.
the students and faculty on the same,
Yeah.
especially the ethics bit of it. Thank you.
So, who else? Who else is more intermediate, more advanced? What helped you get there? What has been helping you communicate with folks that are not as advanced in this topic?
Hey, it's me, the guy with opinions. Uh, um, so I've done, I find a lot of the useful stuff is not in the library space. If you pick a couple of decent publications, Vox, Wired, Slate, follow what they're saying about AI, that really is helpful in terms of getting a grasp and um, getting some basic explanation of what the tools do. Then within the library space, I go to a million conferences because that's what my job is. And I have been to a whole bunch of just conference presentations on AI that are, a lot of them are specific use cases. Also, in preparation for my presentations, one of the things that Thomas and I, my co-presenter, did were we compared AI usage against the ALA Code of Ethics. And then we did it against, I think it's RUSA's best practices for use of AI. And the mental exercise of making those comparisons, of sitting down and trying to create your own presentations, that learning by doing thing, right? That we've been talking about for 30 years. But that was really, really useful to me. What all of that convinced me of is that there are some very limited use cases in which AI is really helpful. They tend to be things like it makes your OCR better, your optical character recognition, if you're digitizing stuff. I saw somebody who did some really interesting stuff with collection development, where what they were doing was essentially using data mining to figure out keywords and keywords over time, because the one thing that these models do very well is pattern recognition. The kind of large scale pattern recognition that no human being wants to look at a million lines of a spreadsheet and try and develop patterns for that. It also convinced me that most uses of the generative text generating AI are antithetical to our values as librarians and make us less human. Hit me up if you want to hear more about my doomsaying and naysaying, but that's in terms of what helped me understand it. It's reading the sort of popular sources outside of librarianship, going to as many specific librarianship, like case study presentations as possible, and then doing the work of comparing it against the code of ethics and stuff. Also, the code of ethics was just revised in a way that made me really angry. um, I have opinions about that too, but I'm not going to monopolize all the time.
I really do appreciate the points of view you bring to the table here, because the first one that you started out with, which is using popular publications to kind of be up on trends and stuff like that. I know here in my home turf, we try to break out of the library bubble from time to time. And, that popular, like, digest of what's going on in these areas is important. I'm public library, so that's what my customers are reading, that's who they are looking to as well. I'm going to talk about me now for a sec, because I'm very novice, but I signed up for ULC's AI fluency course, and I invited a handful of staff to come, at least look at the homework assignments with me. And I saw a couple areas that I felt ethical and in bounds, I guess you could say, which is we have a professional responsibility to be literate on this. And even if there are complications and problems with the tools and the applications of these tools, they're here, and we have to maybe not even figure out how they're going to fit in perfectly or ethically into our lives, but being fluent in what it can do and what it is, because if we tried to sidestep it completely, we are outmoding ourselves. And not only that, but the very people that we're trying to pull up into 21st century workplace skills, those types of things, we should be able to connect them to the things that make a difference in their workspace. So there's certainly, to even understand the ethical dilemmas, to have a base language for it, and then kind of go from there. The last thing I'll mention, at least for now, the way I've been using it in my workflow so far has been kind of what was recommended in the ULC course, which is to use it to argue against itself a little bit, or to develop like a character mind frame of your learner. Like, how do I adapt this so my learner will hear X, or my learner will learn this thing? If I say this, what would this type of learner get out of it? And kind of play off of it in a simulation. So you're making a simulation for the content that you're trying to create. And I think that that's very valuable for my particular workflow. You can certainly kick back and have it write your emails for you and make slide decks for you and do all those things. And maybe even there's something to be said for that too. If you reach a point in your profession where you honestly can rattle off what you do turnkey, my thing is like new hire training. I've done new hire training for so long. I can just turnkey that. I would not want to hand AI to a first year trainer for my new employees. I want somebody to have that base level personal knowledge of that job knowledge of what we want our new employees to know. But me running the same iteration of training over and over and over, it can help me break out of my bubble to review the content and get a fresh perspective if I can use the tool in a way to run simulations. So just some thought there as I navigate this through myself of honestly how I feel as a professional using this massive tool that has so many implications known and unknown. But anyway, but Sam, I do totally appreciate it. And sometimes negative is just another way to spar and get different points of view across, and not a big deal. I have been charged with, I don't have to be a cheerleader or an evangelist for this, but I have to be not afraid of it. That's kind of the middle ground that I need to be as a professional. But anyway, what were you going to say, Sam?
I was just going to say I put some of this in the chat, but if people are looking at this later or anything, I've really tried hard to discern what seems like a use that doesn't violate ethical standards or whatever, and what doesn't. But people were talking about how like your patrons need to know about this stuff. Like I 100% agree with that. Like if patrons have questions about something, it's our duty to answer it regardless of personal opinions or whatever. That's really critical. So, and yeah, you need to be not a blind cheerleader, and you also can't just be reactionary just to do it. You got to actually examine the stuff on its merits. So I'm on your team, Casey.
Oh, I mean, I'm a whole out on certain things. I've been telling people, much to different people's like, I will not use my thumbprint to open my phone. There's just something about that. I hate it. I don't want Google to have my thumbprint. Can it have my thumbprint? It probably already has my thumbprint. Like, um, that's the limitation of like my knowledge and imagination as a consumer, as a person that moves in this world, and the information that we have. But it's that whole, again, kind of coming through with the library ethics of separating the personal from the professional point of view, and that can be a mental loop as well. Like, where is that line? So I've really had to be pretty thoughtful about that. And I think this is actually one of the more exciting topics that have come along in a while, that you have the high highs of like, wow, this is so awesome. Look what can happen. And then the low lows of, what is this? What does this mean? What is this going to do? And, I think that's pretty exciting, actually. Who else? Experts among us that want to weigh in or have any hot takes here?
I just wanted to share one idea. I work at a community college, and so I'm always looking for ideas for faculty and assignments. And one of the uses I just put in the chat there that I think is interesting is using it to kind of role play things. So for example, there's nursing students practicing doing a triage phone call, or anthropology students who are going to interview people practicing first. So I'm setting up a similar type of thing to have a librarians practice doing virtual reference, but where the librarian, the AI is in fact the student, and you are just kind of giving it a dry run, seeing how it goes. So I think those uses are interesting. I haven't actually tried it yet, so we'll see how it works. But and seem less problematic to me as well, because again, the AI is the student, and you're just kind of practicing and at a low stakes, right? To see how it goes. So
Thank you. So what kinds of things are you hoping to learn or discover for your stakeholders that you could provide as a learning professional to your groups? Or have you come up with anything lately? Have you been asked? What are your stakeholders asking you for that maybe you didn't quite know how to answer? Maybe somebody has an answer in this room. Is there anything on your mind as far as what's been going on in your home turf?
I can tell you that one thing that we've been working on. So I'm in the middle of planning our fall schedule of learning offerings at Lyrasis. And I've been looking for people who have case studies, like where they've done a specific thing with a tool that feels like other people could benefit from. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'm really excited about this collection development guy. I've got a meeting with him next week. I saw his poster at ACRL, because I think that that's a place where the AI tool is producing value. And so the more of these case studies that I look at, the more I can do that, but especially things that have to do with either using it for pattern recognition, like the digitizing documents thing is another one that really it works great on, or where it intersects with, so we have a population of students who don't know anything about this. Or we've got a bunch of older professors or older library administrators who don't know much about this. How do we introduce the topic to them in a way that is nuanced and not, all 100 or 0? and actually conveys information. Those are the places that I'm trying to do the work in our professional offerings, because I think that's where a lot of the meat of it is.
I would agree that I feel like you either have your people who are so into it, and that almost turns other people off. Or you have people who just don't ask. They don't ask. It's not in their workflow. It's not in their universe to really think about it, to ask, I need to know more. Or I'll need to know it later. So I'm going to push it off. And really as the trainer in my organization, I'm not getting too many requests of like, I need to know about this right now. It would be me finding ways to offer it, leave that door open, maybe thread it into some other training things that I'm doing so that people can get their hands dirty with it without being forced into it, without a jump scare about this stuff. So I think that that's kind of, I find like it's hot and cold. Like, I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that.
Hey, Casey, I'd be happy to jump in. I I've been doing a handful of things, so um, AI training on teaching and learning, but also professional development for faculty and for students, and also for high school educators. Um, I'm an academic librarian, but right now I'm actually with a position with a consortium representing academic libraries looking at AI and machine learning issues. One of the things that I've been doing that I'm finding is that a challenge seems to be that people really humanize AI agents a lot, but they humanize what they perceive to be the benefits, not necessarily like the limitations or drawbacks, or they sort of don't see the limitations or drawbacks across different contexts. So, one of the things that I've been doing a lot in training is thinking about ways to give people scenarios that sort of lean into that humanization. So like I did some training a couple of weeks ago for almost 200 like secondary educators, and we did an exercise where you had a student that you were going to have to assign to a group for a group project. And the student could bring a lot of benefit in certain ways, but they were kind of one of those quirky students that also had, some particular things about the way that they work that you had to think about strategically and help the group manage. So, how would you do that? And what would those things be? And you can apply that kind of idea to different contexts. But I find quite a lot when I'm talking with folks, it's kind of like when the tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And like that often seems to be the situation that we're in currently. The other thing that I've been doing is a whole lot of work on citation attribution and disclosure practices related to AI use and how we're representing that in a like a transparent way. And I actually have really come to a place where um I think just disclosure and getting to the point where we're actually able to like describe the ways in which we're using the use or we're using the tools, sorry. um I think it's actually kind of like a foundational piece going forward that we need to get in place across contexts, because we almost can't progress to discussing what is or isn't appropriate or ethical or productive unless we're able to sort of openly grapple with like how are we actually using it in the first place and how are we presenting that to others. And it's been really interesting for me, a lot of the work that I've been doing on disclosure practices and a lot of the training and presentations that I've given on that. The extent to which I've had people approach me and say, this is like the practical piece that we're missing, where like I didn't even know how to talk about what I was doing with this. And so for me, I think that that's really one of the things. The other thing I would say is I would encourage folks not just to look at kind of like what's happening outside of the LIS field, but if you are trying to help yourself feel a little like emotionally calmer about this, I look back to some of the conversations in the literature, ours and others, from the rise of the internet in the early to mid 90s. And you can see that a lot of the conversations that were happening then about the internet revolution are the same things that are happening now with AI, or they're very parallel to one another. And I've found that to be very useful. Anytime that I get a little bit of imposter syndrome and think, who am I to be a person doing or saying something like this? And I saw Gabriel put a thing about citation standards. So there are citation standards from most of the major citation bodies, but the problem is that citation is meant to refer to a fixed form of a thing, of an idea, or like the output. And so citation isn't always appropriate for AI outputs because they might not be fixed, they might not be reproducible. And so it's really it's a huge challenge in research and educational contexts. And in a lot of ways, I think is actually doing to Western scholarly academic literature what we've done to Indigenous knowledge, personal communication over the years. It's really disconnecting a lot of that from the place and people from whom it originated. And so that's a really, I don't have a resolution to that. It's just an interesting dynamic to see. Yeah, AI as colonizer. And that's actually the process that's happening when it comes to that intellectual property side. So anyhow, sorry, I spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about this. So some random musings from me.
We have also had a similar conversation about normalizing this disruption, which, you know, is that juxtaposition there. This is a disruptor. The internet was a disruptor. Wikipedia was a disruptor. And there were a lot of negatives that were brought to the forefront when people were talking about how to make room for this adjustment, like this disruption. And I think what compounds this right now is many of us see the enormity. I think this is very comparable to internet rather than Wikipedia as far as the exponential nature of how this is used. And even people saying this is going to dwarf internet as far as the type of technology that this is. Compounding that is we've just had nonstop change for half a decade. Like it's just been a lot for people to take in and wrap their minds around. And it's disruption fatigue. And so I think that keeps people from being kind of excited about this new thing, maybe more so than in the past. I think that if we were in a different context, maybe a different time frame, maybe you would get people a little bit more curious and asking about it and not hoping it doesn't hit them. But yeah, I think just kind of normalizing it, not normalizing it in that it gets to be that colonizer, like that what it says goes, but normalizing disruption and normalizing that this is yet another thing. We've done it before. We've done a good job with some things. I think in our profession we have. That this is a chance to be that neutral observer and weigh the pros and cons and give our learners the best foot forward with this new territory. So I don't know. I definitely share that that insight there about comparing it to what we've been through before as far as industry upenders.
I'd love to jump in on Carrie's comment as well. I'm a high school library media specialist, and a lot of our conversations right now are around using AI as part of a process, whether it's writing or research, and how do we document that, as well as issues with academic honesty, and being super explicit with students about how and when they can use AI and what that looks like. Personally, I am trying to use AI like a student and be in that mindset of a user. What am I using AI for? What type of information is it giving me when I am using it? And trying to compare that output to other types of research that I'm doing. And so I'm finding that it really, as much as I want to support it and see the glory of it, I'm finding that it's really lacking in its ability to provide relevant, credible information. And so a lot of the students that we have here are automatically going to it, using it as if they were using Google, typing in a question. They're not understanding how to properly prompt AI. So that's one teaching aspect, is like what goes into an effective prompt and how can I get this tool to give me what I'm looking for or direct me to sources of information without it giving me a specific link that I then have to do my lateral reading and then think about double checking, which is just good practice. So I feel like that hasn't changed, is our practice for thinking about credibility and reliability of sources. But for our users who might be stuck in a research process, how can we use generative AI to brainstorm key terms for a search that we might be doing? How can we use it to give us ideas about where we can go to find good types of information rather than give us the sources itself? That's where I'm trying to kind of heading and trying to gear tier students toward, and doing a comparative analysis of what does our search look like on AI, like a ChatGPT or Perplexity, versus what does research look like when we go to Google and do the same keyword search term versus the database, and what are the merits and disadvantages of using each of those. So that's kind of where I'm at in the process. And in terms of the citation, we are trying to get students to be citing these elements more and more. But I love what Carrie was saying about the process. And that's, I think, the next step, is having students be really explicit. Did I use it for brainstorming? Did I use it for outlining? Did I use it as a thought partner or collaborator? And I think that a lot of teachers in my district, some are really into that and they're ready to take that and run, whereas other people don't want to, approach that or entertain it at all, because they think of it as like a gateway to academic dishonesty. So we're kind of all over the place, but I want to continue to figure out ways that it can be leveraged well and not, it's also a time suck because I'm seeing a lot of kids go into this tool and they spend hours having conversations with AI or to write an assignment or do some work when they could very well just use that time to do their own work. But they think that going to this tool is going to be smarter than them, right? And have all the answers. So also having the conversation with users that you are the human, and while we think computers are so smart, as humans, right, we have the ability to recorrect or course correct the conversation that AI is having with us, or kind of steer it in a way that is more useful for what we're looking for, rather than feel controlled by the AI and be limited by that output. So I appreciate the conversation today, and that was just my input. Thank you, guys.
No, I appreciate it, Catherine. Thank you so much. I definitely see the challenge here of viewing AI as an information tool because it's so suspect in that way, in the manner of which you guys have mentioned, whether it's the big tech companies were mentioned in the chat, replacing workers is mentioned in the chat, like these really apocalyptic level terrible outcomes that people don't want. But the Carrie had also mentioned in the chat, the strength it has in project planning, organizing your thoughts, things like that. And I've experienced that as well with it being a sounding board to help me be more organized. And I think in the webinar series that I did attend, they kind of suggested that you think of it, and I know maybe going against what other opinion was mentioned here, that you are personalizing it because it's almost like you're talking to your neighbor has a bias. Like you have to, you can't take this as the all-knowing source of information. You have to almost consider this tool to be like a character in a way, that it's skewed. It's going to give you an opinion. It's almost like that. And that reminds me of being an undergrad when we would read histories about ancient Greece. And my favorite historian was Herodotus. And Herodotus wrote his histories by saying, they say this happened, and he would tell some wild tale. They say that happened and tell some wild tale. And there was not great citation, but this history has remained around for millennia here, a long time. And it's just, you have to take it within its context, and us being very clear about the context. If we can come up with a citation measure that makes sense for this type of a tool, really promote the usage that it makes sense to use in its current state until it becomes more accurate over time, which hopefully that's the direction. But if that's not the direction, then, as information professionals, promoting its usage in a way that it's most effective. I think, because it's here and because it's like a loud friend that people are just going to be paying a lot of attention to, like people are going to be listening to this thing. So to provide that counterballast of the best way to incorporate that tool's input into the way people frame their information and put it together and communicate it. So yes, what Sam mentions as it's the aggregated opinion of whatever data set the AI was trained on, but you don't see that part. So it's easy to feel like it's a disembodied authoritative voice. Yeah, it's a loudmouth, right? So, not making it a primary research tool, but a supplementary or something. And I think, again, that normalizes it. It brings it back down into something that we can process and handle and frame for the people that we train, our students. I think that's the way to get on board, I guess, as the people having to train it. We don't have to be their best friend, but we have to know who they are, who moved next door. Okay, I'm gonna check my notes here. I think we really did touch on quite a bit of this. So, we did hear a little bit about addressing potential concerns. We have mentioned different platforms and tools specifically. But maybe we could close out our chat if you wanted to suggest a good experience that you've had with a easy to access tool, that if you have not touched any AI, what would you recommend, not only to people in this room, but everybody in this room has a stakeholder who they might be able to share with. So if you want to give a recommendation of something to start out with, and you want to dump it in the chat, if you want to tell an anecdote and unmic yourself, go for it. I honestly think this is something that we could talk about every week and still have updates and different things to air out. And Lindsay, if you want to add any information about the upcoming webinar, right? That is, AI is the theme for this next couple weeks for Learn RT, because we do have the Collaborate Querying Generating In-House AI Professional Development for Library Staff is that upcoming webinar. We are very excited to kick off our webinar series throughout the year, starting with this one. We did a call for entries not long ago, and we got some really nice feedback from people. We have fun stuff happening before and at ALA Annual. Are any of you getting to go to Philadelphia? Will I see any of you there? I will be there in person. I will look forward to meeting you. Lindsay posted at some in one of our email threads that we have 365 members of Learning Roundtable. That's one person per day of the week, or per day of the year anyway. So that's pretty great. So I really think that would be a really nice time for us to mix and mingle. And if you are getting to go, I hope you enjoyed this chat. I liked spending my lunch with you. I hope you come back. I think we'll try and find more hot topics like this that people are opinionated about, because it's fun. If nothing else, it's fun to hear where people are coming from and point, counterpoint, and all that. So thank you so much for joining us. If you are not a member and would like to become one, it's just a small fee tacked onto your ALA membership, and we can hang out for a minute if you've got any other questions about Learning RT. And maybe we can pull this chat and save it somewhere and also post it for those who want to flip back and get some recommendations, or at least new friends, right? So you know who to call when you got questions. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon.